What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of There Are 400 Million Firearms Circulating in the United States of America, and Ja Morant owns at least one of them. As always, I am your host, Zach Cronin, and today we're going to be talking about the new Ja Morant situation. This past weekend, Ja Morant was once again seen on Instagram Live brandishing a firearm. The only difference is that this live stream was not his. It was a friend of his. They were in the car and just hanging out. Dude turns, puts Ja on the camera, and Ja is holding this object that appears to be a pistol. Very reminiscent of the situation that unfolded back in March. Now, before we get into this whole conversation, I think I need to come out and just address my ideology on guns just so you guys can understand the perspective that I'm coming from. By no means am I a gun abolitionist. I'm also not a gun anarchist. I, like the majority of people that live in the United States, believe that there should be common sense gun reform. Things like universal background checks, red flag laws, rigorous testing psychologically, like how they do in other countries, maybe get character references as well from one, two, maybe even three people, as well as rigorous firearm training once you get your license, just to make sure that you're a responsible and law abiding gun owner. Because just because there are all these guns floating around the United States, and yes, there are a lot, like anywhere between 390 to 430 million, depending on what study you look at. Other countries like Norway and I believe Switzerland as well has a gun ownership culture as well, but they don't have nearly the same amount of problems that we do here in the United States. So my whole take on this situation with Ja Morant is that there needs to be some level of consequence. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies posted on May 14th. They announced that they would be suspending Ja Morant from all team activities more or less indefinitely. The video surfaced on May 14th as well, I believe, or May 13th, but the Grizzlies acted quickly because this is, again, the second time this has happened. Just to refresh you guys, back on March 4th, the NBA opened their investigation into Ja Morant having the firearm in the Denver nightclub. Ultimately, the Denver police got involved as well. Fortunately, Ja was not legally charged with anything. He didn't face jail time. Thank God that, he didn't, because as dumb as it didn't appear that he did anything illegal. However, he was suspended by the team and by the NBA. He met with Adam Silver on March 15th in New York City. He had been undergoing counseling. I think he was in therapy as well, just trying to reduce his stress, his anxiety, and overall better manage his mental well being. Because let's not forget, this guy is 23 years old, okay? He is still a kid. And it's tough being a high profile person in the information age, especially at 23. So Ja served an 8-game suspension. He came back to play for the Grizzlies on March 22nd in their game against the Houston Rockets. Now, in the aftermath of this situation, Adam Silver said to ESPN, I'm fairly certain it was ESPN, that he is expecting the worst. The NBA is undergoing the appropriate protocols. They're trying to gather information. I believe Mike Bass said that although the video is grainy, there's really no definitive proof that it is a gun, although it's a gun, man. Everyone knows it's a gun. It's a pistol. He had the heat on him, okay? He was strapped. Ja was strapped. Adam Silver is basically like, although we can't say anything for certain, I am expecting the worst. Now, his full quote on this situation is, "We talked directly about the consequences first. Before we got to a subsequent potential to have to do something wrong, we were very focused on the misconduct that was in front of us at the time. Frankly, most of our conversation was about how incredibly serious the first incident was of waving a firearm on social media. Again, the consequences there, an 8-game suspension, was pretty serious and something that he, at least to me, seemed to take incredibly seriously in that time. And we spoke for a long time about not just the consequences that could have on his career, but the safety issues around it. Ja Morant could have been injured, maimed, killed himself, someone else with an act like that. And although the acknowledgement that he's a star, and also the acknowledgement that he's a star. He has an incredibly huge following, and we discussed my concern, and I thought he shared with me that millions, if not tens of millions of kids globally would have seen him do something that was celebrating in a way that what? Hold on, let's try that again. What? He has an incredibly huge following, and we discussed my concern, and I thought he shared with me that millions, if not tens of millions of kids globally would have seen him do something that was celebrating in a way that active using a firearm in that fashion. So I at least was left with the sense that he was taking this incredibly seriously. I feel the same way now that I did during the original incident. As far as I'm concerned, Ja should just be punished for being a dumbass. He's being a dumbass. Fortunately, that is all that he's being. And as Adam Silver mentioned, nobody got hurt. He didn't get hurt. No innocent bystanders got hurt. His friend didn't get hurt. Fortunately, none of this happened. And as far as I know, Ja does have his legal right to own this firearm, which, again, I don't have a problem with firearms themselves. I have a problem with how people conduct themselves around firearms. And Van Lathan, who I believe used to work for TMZ, I'm not sure if he still does anymore, but he had a tweet that was like, he was seriously questioning if folks had an issue with the gun itself or with the way Ja was handling them. While I'm certain that there are folks that have an issue with the gun itself, I have an issue with how Ja is carrying himself as a gun owner. And again, this goes back to my ideology in the beginning. I've shot guns before. I think guns are a lot of fun. I think it's fun going to the range with a bunch of your friends and testing out some unique kinds of weapons. But you also have to recognize the fact that these are instruments that are used exclusively to kill, whether it's human beings, whether it's animals. These are weapons of murder, and they have to be treated with care. I wouldn't mind if Ja was a gun enthusiast. Like this was the example that Van Lathan used. I would have no issues if Ja had like a YouTube channel where he was in his backyard, like showing off these weapons, like taking them apart, talking about them, and also emphasizing the safety aspect of owning a gun. Because this is anecdotal, of course, but I have a couple friends that own guns. All of my friends that own guns are legally allowed to do so, and they take great care of these guns. And they also, again, stress that you have to be extra careful when using these tools. Ja is not being careful, and this is the issue that I take with it. Now, what level of punishment should he face? I say double the suspension. Suspend him for a month, 6 weeks, maybe something like that, because you have to show that there are consequences to stuff like this. But you don't want to go overboard. Like you don't want to suspend Ja for the entire season. You don't want to like run him out of the NBA because he doesn't deserve that. There's no reason for him to be treated like he is a sexual assaulter, like he's a rapist, like he's a murderer, or something like that. This is not a legal. This is not a legal matter. This is again just a matter of him being a dumbass, and there is really like no severe penalty for dumbassery in the United States of America, which I'm surprised hasn't been criminalized quite yet with just how rigorous the criminal justice system is. But I don't have an actual like plan of recourse for this. If I'm Adam Silver, I'm probably gonna tell him like, hey, we're gonna suspend you for 20 games, and you're going to again have to continue to undergo like counseling, therapy, get the appropriate mental help, and find him and like help him find the appropriate mental help. Also, maybe like have him go around and talk to people who are, more gun enthusiasts and have them stress to him the safety of owning a firearm because you have to look at the context of the country that we live in. It's like 140 days into 2023 and there have already been like more than 200 mass shootings. I mean, there has been one every day for the last like there has been like a major mass shooting almost every other day for the last couple of weeks. Like it's frightening. You have to stress the real world implications of stuff like this. Like it may be cool on social media to like flash your weapon or like for whatever reason, you may think that that's cool, but it's not. Like this is a serious thing. This is a serious instrument that you're holding. It again only serves one purpose, and that is to destroy. Like it's a firearm, dude. It's made to kill people. That's the only way to look at it. My two biggest hopes from this situation is that Ja gets a heavy punishment that isn't overboard, because I feel the NBA is going to overreact to this. I really there is something in my there is something in my gut telling me that Adam Silver and the league office is going to look at this second indiscretion that is not too dissimilar from the first and just drop the hammer on this kid. And I do not want that to happen. My other biggest hope is that Ja learns the error of his ways, and he learns that he can't behave like this, and that if he is going to be a gun owner, he has to learn how to be a respectful gun owner, because like there are people who take great pride in the firearms that they own. They, you know, clean them properly, they maintain them, they lock them up safely. That is another thing. You do not want one of your children gaining access to this firearm. That is a big issue as well in this country. These are the things that Ja needs to have stressed to him. This is about himself being safe, but also the safety of those around him. Because you don't want him to be in this habit of carrying a gun on him at all times. All right? He doesn't need that. He doesn't need to keep the heat on him. Who is he hanging out with that he feels the need to have a gun? Like, I don't know. Maybe he's hanging out with some unsavory characters, but listen, if that's the case, like, this is a learning experience for him. This is an area where this is the perfect avenue for rehabilitation as a form of justice, quote unquote, I guess, because like there's really no justice to be served here. But Ja has to learn that this is serious. And he has to learn that this is serious before somebody gets hurt, before he himself gets hurt. And I think that overall, that's really all I have to say on the matter. Ja himself did come out with the statement that I'm going to read to you guys as well. He said, quote, "I know I've disappointed a lot of people who have supported me. This is a journey, and I recognize there is more work to do. My words may not mean much right now, but I take full accountability for my actions. I'm committed to continuing to work on myself." I appreciate this type of response, regardless of if he actually believes it or not, because I mean, we had an instance earlier this year where Kyrie Irving got in hot water for sharing the link to an anti-Semitic film on Twitter, and he was very like smug about his apology. He didn't see why he was wrong. Ja, I mean, I think that he's sincere in this regard. I never got like Ja does not strike me as the kind of guy who's just like saying sorry for the sake of being sorry. I think that again, he's just a kid who is learning how to deal with being a high profile person. So I think he's sincere in this regard, and I'm hopeful that the NBA, his family, I hope that they all work together to help him grow from this and not treat him as, a criminal, because he's not. He's just being silly. That's all it is. He's just being a little bit of a silly goose. Granted, this is the second time it happened, but again, I cannot stress enough the fact and the hope that I have that the NBA doesn't overreact to the situation. So, I do want to also, before I close out, there was this Juan Toscano Anderson had the worst take of all time on this one. Juan Toscano Anderson, after this came out, he had two tweets on this situation. He said, "Ja friends really the police. Why are they always recording?" He then followed this up: "If people got their phone out recording my privacy and private time, that's a way to never be invited around me again. However, I am mature enough to understand accountability, but why are they always recording? This is not understanding accountability. If you understood accountability, you would say that Ja, who knew his friend was recording, should never have pulled the gun out while he was recording, because the way that the clip is set up is that his friend is recording himself, like the friend is recording himself, and then turns the camera to Ja, and Ja is waving the gun around. This is not like Ja is not the victim here. This is all his doing. The whole "why are they always recording" is because, bro, this is the world that we live in. Okay, we live in a society where everyone is on their phones all the time, recording everything. Okay, you're 23 years old. You should know this better than I do. Or better than anyone else. I'm 26. I'm an old man as far as the internet is concerned, and even I know to be aware of the fact that people are always recording and people always have their phones out. It's just the world that we live in. So with that, I'm going to close this out. I hope that Ja gets the help that he needs. I hope that he is okay mentally as well, and that if there is anything that he needs to address, he gets it addressed by a professional. Because I think, beyond the Ja being an exciting athlete, he is still a human being who deals with trauma and has things that he has to overcome just like the rest of us. So I hope that he gets the necessary help. And again, I hope that Adam Silver and the league office do not come down too hard on this young man and effectively ruin his career, because this is not an offense that is deserving of that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead, close this one out. Thank you guys so very much for coming to hang out with me today. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, subscribe to the channel as well. Like the video if you enjoyed it. And with that, I'll catch y'all in the next one.